Good morning, afternoon, and evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Zachary Nolan. Carter Nolan is behind the camera.
Once again.
Welcome, new viewers. If you're new to the channel, we'd really appreciate if you could subscribe. We've been covering the playoffs recently. Leave a like as well. Comment down below your thoughts on the Winnipeg Jets. Whether you like them, whether you don't like them, that's okay. We are definitely firmly in the like them, but they frustrate us camp. So let's get into the 2021-2022 season. A season that was largely a little bit of a big disappointment for Jets fans. The Jets seemingly bolstered their defense in the offseason, and seemingly made a couple sleeper picks for offense coming in. Defense, there was the big signings of Brendan Dillon and Nate Schmidt, and then nothing really, and that's kind of extremely disappointing. The Jets missed the postseason for the first time since 2017, and yeah, let's get into the season. So I'm going to take you through. First off, I'm going to do two things. We're going to go through what were the pros and cons and all of that and the results of that. But first, we're going to go through the season as a whole. So let's start. We go, and the Jets have about 6 preseason games. Now, they only win 2 games, one against the Edmonton Oilers, one against the Calgary Flames, but that's okay, because for the most part, they end up using an underpowered roster. Like, they lose in overtime against Ottawa, and then they lose 3 games scattered between Vancouver, Calgary, and Edmonton. That's okay, because honestly, preseason, you're just getting guys in the lineup trying out. So then we go to the opening night rosters. They lose a 4-1 game in Anaheim. They then go on to lose a 4-3 game in San Jose, and then lose an absolutely devastating loss to the Minnesota Wild in overtime in a game where they led 5-3. They thought they had scored the empty netter to make it 6-4. Then Minnesota comes back and scores and beats them in overtime. Afterwards, the Winnipeg Jets go on a bit of a run. They have 7 straight games where they get at least a point, including 1 overtime loss to the San Jose Sharks, to get it started. And honestly, this is kind of what we thought we'd see of the newer type of Jets. More games where at least they're getting to overtime. But as we will find out, overtime became what would be known more as a curse, honestly, than a blessing in this case. They lose 2-0 to the Islanders. Okay, is what it is. But then they go on a just as impressive run of five more straight games, including 2 shootout losses and 3 wins, of at least getting a point per game. Then we go into a little bit of a dip here. They lose to the Vancouver Canucks, Pittsburgh Penguins, Columbus Blue Jackets, and Minnesota Wild. 4 straight losses, and honestly, that is going to be a reoccurring factor, is the losing streaks. And what happened here is, honestly, they lose to Columbus, who at the time was way lower than them in the standings and was an issue. They then go and win 1 in Calgary after losing 5 straight, but then they lose 1-0 to Arizona. The Arizona game is part of the reason why the Jets didn't make the playoffs. And I don't mean just like this one loss to Arizona. No, I mean the fact that there were games that stylistically and talent-wise, the Winnipeg Jets should have won that they didn't win.
I think we put up 50 shots that game.
Yes, something like that. Like, it was insane. Jets then win a couple, lose a couple. Honestly, nothing really of major note happens until January. January is where we switch out coaching, honestly. We right after the Buffalo game, I believe, where we lose 4-2, Paul Maurice steps down as coach of the Winnipeg Jets. So then we go into the Dave Lowry into interim coaching. He had a rough start, losing 6-2 to Washington, but then we win 4-2 to St. Louis. We then win 5-4 in overtime to the Vegas Golden Knights, and then 3-1 to Arizona. At this point, people were thinking, maybe Dave Lowry is the answer. Then the Jets lose 7-1 to Colorado. Ouch. They bounce back a week later to win 3-0 to Detroit, and then is the rough times. They lose a game in overtime, a game in a shootout, but overall they'll go on a 6-game losing streak before finally snapping it against the St. Louis Blues, before shortly losing to the Philadelphia Flyers not long after. They actually have a pretty good February to start, at least, but by the end of it, honestly, they're hoping for the sweet release of death. They have it as another 4-game losing streak, including a shootout or an overtime loss to the Dallas Stars. We keep going in the schedule. We get to March. March, honestly, where the Jets are beginning to have to become into survival mode. It starts off well. It really does start off well. But at the end of the month, pretty much, they lose to the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Los Angeles Kings, the Detroit Red Wings, and the Colorado Avalanche, all in sequential order. So that adds another 4-game losing streak. Then, in the dire minutes, pretty much the dire last moments of the season, they then go on another 4-game losing streak on the road to Florida, Tampa Bay, New York, and Carolina, and then we'll end out the year with a 4-0 winning streak. Now, let's kind of just look at that in isolation. Honestly, some things that cannot be replicated. 3 4-game losing streaks, a 5-game losing streak, and a 6-game losing streak. Those were the huge... They were just looming dark clouds over the season. You couldn't escape them. When the Jets lost, it felt like they lost in bunches. Overtime losses were a huge negative factor in this season. Last year, overtime losses were few and far between. But this season, it became such a focus and such a grim omen that when the Jets made it to overtime, they were only going to come out with 1 point. Those points honestly cost them like 10 games, at least. And they were out of the playoffs by 9 points. So think about that, honestly. And then there's a couple other storylines that we kind of have to get through here. So let's talk about some pros in here, Arzo. Let's mix some pros in here. Evgeny Svechnikov is signing in the offseason. That was wonderful. And also it finds out that we have team control on Evgeny Svechnikov. He's an RFA going into the season. He had a career year with the Winnipeg Jets, putting up just under 20 points, I believe, with the club. Honestly, he fit in very well anywhere in the lineup when the coach decided to use him. It took them a while in the season to get him a regular spot on the roster, but once he was there, it was extremely effective, and he was a factor on the ice. So look forward to see him come back. Kyle Connor. This is the best of the best of the best this season for Kyle Connor. Kyle Connor broke the record for points by a Jet, a 2.0 Jet, goals and possibly assists as well. But he led the team in all facets of the game. He got really close, honestly, to joining the 50-goal club. He easily won the 3 Stars award for the Winnipeg Jets for the most nominations for the 3 Stars. Overall, Kyle Connor was playing like a franchise winger. And honestly, some nights you kind of just wonder how he was able to do so much with his back hurting from just carrying the Winnipeg Jets. Nikola Eeler's not quite an explosive season as he did last season, but this season, nonetheless, was still an effective one for the dashing Dane. Eelers was able to put up about 28 to 29 points. Got it. Sorry, it's a spider. That's terrifying.
Continue.
Just whistled in.
Continue.
Anyway. But yeah, Eelers was still an effective winger, honestly, although he did take some time off sometimes in the season through the odd injury or two, but then again, it happens. Also, speaking of injuries, the Winnipeg Jets were extremely effective when both Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele were out of the lineup. I'll let you make of that what you will, honestly. It might show that we don't need to be so reliant on those 2 players. But yeah, let's keep going. Schmidt signing. Schmidt signing was good. Honestly, the Schmidt signing and the Dillon signing seemingly went opposite ways here. Now, granted, Schmidt's production slowed down drastically after the midway point of the season. However, overall, the Schmidt signing should be seen as a positive one at that. Yeah, guys, don't worry. We still got a lot more to go here. Yeah. Carter gave me a face. The Schmidt signing was good, honestly. He was good on the back end. Pairing him with Josh Morrissey, good idea. One guy talks all the time. One guy talks never. It's a good pairing, honestly. I really liked it. Eric Comrie. The redemption story of the season was Eric Comrie. How many times have we said this before? Eric Comrie just does not work as a backup. Well, guess what? We can say that no longer because Eric Comrie is a very very capable backup goaltender. Eric Comrie was lights out in most of his performances, having a record where he finally was able to amass his first career shutout as well in his last game of the season against the Philadelphia Flyers. The Jets played great in front of Eric Comrie, and he repaid them twice fold over.
I thought Comrie played against Seattle.
Yeah, but he got a shutout against Philadelphia.
Oh, I thought you said in his last game of the season.
Oh, who cares?
Oh, okay.
Close enough. Speaking of which, 2 sweeps to report here. There might be more, but these are the 2 that stuck out to me. The Jets swept both expansion franchises, the Seattle Kraken and the Vegas Golden Knights. The Jets had 3-0 sweeps on both franchises, which is good because then it makes it known that we haven't lost to Seattle at all. And with Vegas, it's always good to win games against Vegas because, honestly, that was part of the reason why they didn't make the playoffs this year, was those 3 losses to the Winnipeg Jets. Isn't that a nice fact? Couple milestones were reached today. Kyle Connor obviously set some records. Wheeler recorded his 1,000th game in the NHL with a victory over the Toronto Maple Leafs. What a game that was. What a lovely win that was. And Stasny recorded his 800th point in the final season. It was a hot start, honestly, like I said. And Josh Morrissey had what I would like to call the Josh Morrissey Redemption Tour. I believe that Josh Morrissey can play top minutes for the defensive core. I have thought it in the past, but I've been very hesitant to say it. Now, there's less hesitation. Josh Morrissey had a great season. Not the biggest point production, but both sides of the ice, he tried to really give it a lot. Now, let's go over the cons, okay, shall we? 3 to 4 game losing streaks, right? 5 and a 6. Hellebuyck was not a negative, but how we used Connor Hellebuyck was a negative. Connor Hellebuyck had a rough season. He was overworked too much. This is one of the first seasons where analytics haven't had Connor Hellebuyck anywhere near the Vezina conversation. They still have him as an elite goaltender, but they had him. He would have been a dark horse for any Vezina conversation. He would have been probably polling 7th or 8th in the Vezina list, honestly. And some pundits had him as low as being the 14th best goaltender in the league, which is a far cry from the Vezina goaltender that we're used to. It just comes down to working him too many games. It's Mika Kiprusoff syndrome. You play him all the time because you think you need to use him to win, but at the end of the day, you had a backup goalie that was totally effective that you didn't need. So you didn't need to work your starter into the ground. It was frustrating, it was tough, and honestly, it did have an effect on Hellebuyck's play. His play would deteriorate. Sometimes he was letting in shots that he shouldn't have been letting in, and it's a shame because Hellebuyck is a great goaltender, and I think he actually believes in this franchise. But you can't just say, all right, Hellebuyck, just drive for as many miles as you want. No, you need to limit him. He should be playing like 60 games max. Max. Not minimum, max. Anyway, we blew games. We blew a lot of leads sometimes. It was frustrating. Also, when we got behind, it was very difficult for this team to come back. But there was a couple games where it was very key. For example, the Minnesota game and the Colorado game where we lost 6-3 were an example of that. But also, we didn't just blow games where we were ahead. We blew expected games. We lose to Philadelphia. We lose to Ottawa. We lose to Arizona. We lose to Columbus. Like, there were games in there where this team needed to perform and needed to put away a low contender, and they couldn't. They honestly played down to their opponents in some games, and it was very frustrating because the team never had moments where they truly excelled unless they had pressure. And why, oh why, would you only be effective when you're getting pressured by a good team? Then there's still a chance you don't win. The Dallas series. The Dallas series. The Dallas series was the death of this entire season. 4 games, all go to overtime. Winnipeg wins 1. That was part of the difference maker on why Dallas is in the playoffs and why the Winnipeg Jets are not. It showed the flaws of their team 3-on-3. This team could not win 3-on-3 when it mattered most. Logan Stanley was not a good story, I will say. Logan Stanley was a regression story. However, the one good news is it introduced us to our new best friend, Dylan Samberg. Dylan Samberg is going to be a Winnipeg Jet next season. Mark my words, you know for a fact he will be, because Dylan Samberg was a great addition on the back end. Logan Stanley struggled. Logan Stanley tried to play into a big guy type effect, a physical presence, and sometimes he just struggled to be that physical presence. Don't get me wrong, when he succeeded, he really succeeded, but a lot of the times he picked fights with guys that might have been able to beat him in a back alley. Let's just put it that way. Also, he made some bad mistakes, and that was frustrating. Perfetti was torn up with injuries, and that sucks, honestly. Cole Perfetti had a great start for his time with the Winnipeg Jets, but he struggled mostly because he wasn't in the lineup a lot. Injuries really kept him out of the lineup for the rest of the remainder of the year. And the last thing that I'll say in the big con category, Christian Vesalainen. Nope. Winnipeg's first bust of a pick is Christian Vesalainen. He is the first bust of the Winnipeg Jets, and I hate saying it, but yeah, you got to trade Vesalainen. Vesalainen is now on the Manitoba Moose right now. Nobody noticed when we dropped him down to the Manitoba Moose, honestly, and that's just the sad fact of life. Nobody cared. He had 3 points in 52 games. How do you have 3 points in 52 games? My dude, we played you on the second line some nights. What happened there? It was, oh my God. Let's go through some of the results of the season. Jets acquire Morgan Barron, they reacquire Mason Appleton, and they acquire Zach Sanford. Now, of these 3 players, 2 will stay. Appleton is an RFA. Jets will re-sign him, and I actually like Appleton. Zach Sanford, no chance in hell he stays. He's a UFA. Afterwards, we acquired him for a 4th-round pick. I don't know why we did it. If I'm being completely honest, there was no way that this team was competing past the trade deadline. But yeah, Zach Sanford will leave in free agency. We'll do a video on it, but he's going to go. We know this. I wouldn't re-sign him. You need that room for guys like David Gustafsson, who is torn up with injuries, but I'm hoping we get to see in the future. Morgan Barron. Morgan Barron was a good story. Morgan Barron was a good bright spot at the end of the year for the Winnipeg Jets when not a lot of bright spots were found. Morgan Barron looked great as a Winnipeg Jet. I want more. Morgan Barron can play possibly top 6 minutes. He had 5 points in around 10 games, so to speak, with the Winnipeg Jets. He looked confident on the top line. They played him all around the roster. He still put up points. He had very good chemistry with Stastny and Ehlers. By the way, Stastny, good story, by the way. Stastny put up over 40 points at his age. Re-signed Stastny as well. But yeah. Also, what also happened, we had a coaching change. No more Pomo. There was, Paul Maurice stepped down, and Dave Lowry took over, and it didn't change enough, honestly. It didn't change enough. Anyway, Jets missed the playoffs, Dennis Beck retires, and we trade Andrew Kopp. This was the sign that we were, not tanking, but we weren't winning. We knew we had to trade Andrew Kopp. Selling, right. Andrew Kopp is a New York Ranger, and he's succeeding. As of speaking right now, Andrew Kopp has at least 2 goals, I believe 1 assist, possibly. I might be wrong on the assist part. They just won Game 2 against the Pittsburgh Penguins, hoping they make the 3rd round because then the Jets got a 1st-round pick. We also traded Nathan Beaulieu and Nathan Smith and Brian Little's contract, and yeah, that's about it. But yeah, guys, honestly, all in all, a disappointing season. And I don't like talking. I will not think of the season highly, but I do appreciate all your guys' support throughout the entire 82-game season. Thank you so much. We'll be back next season for Jets game reactions. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Connor, the old Spencer Copper. Connor in front.